This is the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The protagonist is Sir William Morris. He was a member of the Continental Navy. That is what the American naval force was called in the Revolutionary War. On a peaceful night after the surrender of Saratoga, Morris and his crew were sailing through the Atlantic Ocean. The men were talking about James Cook's voyages. This man was obsessed about surpassing and exploring the Antarctic Circle, although it wasn't clear who was behind the funding of these explorations. This is when Captain Butler, who was very well respected, he joined in on the sailing stories and talked about this entrance in the ice walls in the Antarctica that led to other lands, and everybody's like, what? Basically, this passageway connected us to other worlds. Everyone was looking at him, and they expected him to say that this was all a joke. But he didn't say that. They couldn't believe that the captain was literally saying that there were unknown lands behind this ice wall. This story was super long, and he went into details. He told them that he saw evidence himself of it. Time went by after the war, and the ships used by the Continental Navy were being rented, destroyed, some were captured, and others were sold. William Morris was in very good economic standing by the end of the war. He decided to buy one of these ships. Literally, he couldn't think of anything else besides the story that Captain Butler told him about these lands beyond the ice wall. Morris felt that this was a good investment. Although he did not know the real danger of this trip, he needed to get a great ship and great equipment. Planned to set sail by the end of November. At this point, he wanted to form a team, so he talks to several of his colleagues. But a lot of people laughed it off, thinking that he was cuckoo. But several of them that were on the boat the night that Butler told his story, they accepted. And now the difficult part was to convince Captain Butler to join them. Butler was the only one that had the navigation skills and knew where the coordinates were to this passage. Without him, they could not do this voyage. And initially, Butler declined the offer. Things remained like that for a long time. But unexpectedly, one morning, Butler shows up in Morris's house, and he wasn't alone. He had a man named Flint with him, all dressed in black, and this man carried maps and documents that Morris had never seen before. And this is when Butler told him that he was willing to join the voyage and do this trip, but it was going to be a one-way trip. After such a phrase from the captain, they finalized the details. Now they were set for the departure date on November 14th. It was at this point that Flint, the mysterious partner, introduced himself and said that he would also join the team. Now on November 12th, 2 days before they had to leave, Flint, Butler's partner, shows up at Morris's door with another man that looked even more mysterious than he was. He was all dressed in black and had a very strange accent. Flint had a briefcase that he opened as soon as he was inside. He opened the briefcase and there were lots of documents, and between these documents was this very large manuscript. And then he began to recite parts of it. Then by demand I subscribe in major importance, here by desire of our lords, that the doors of knowledge be closed to those who refuse to be part of our glorious path and liberties granted. The text went on for several more lines, and then at the end, the so-called Poem Regius was recited. And as soon as he finished this reading, Morris says, "What was that? It sounds like some initiation into some secret club, society type of thing." And Flint said, "Exactly, comrade. Precisely, those who pass this initiation are the marginalized. Better said, we are the marginalized." Morris demanded that Flint explain to him better. He wanted to know what this manuscript had to do with their voyage. This is when Flint tells him that this manuscript belongs to the custodians, and that these beings are known as the sun gods. Then he goes on to tell him that these beings found out about their trip through Butler. High spheres are aware of it, and they are not happy about it. And this manuscript proves and raises the point that they will not let anyone go beyond the known lands. The situation couldn't get any worse. This voyage was already risky in per se, not even considering the weather and every other thing that could go wrong. Now they had this foreign, mysterious enemy. So Morris asked, who are these custodians? So Flint is now walking around in circles, and this is when his mysterious friend opened his mouth. And he said these custodians are not happy about our trip and that they couldn't tell him anything more. And Flint recommended that they cancel it. It wasn't worth risking our lives, but he said it with a threatening tone, and this is when Morris, clicked and tossed them out of his house. The man that was with Flint gave Morris a very defiant look. Morris at this point tries to contact Butler to see what was going on. Who are these people? What are they talking about? But Butler was nowhere to be found. At this point, without Butler anyplace, they gathered the emergency team to discuss about what to do next. This travel was clearly becoming dark and sinister, but an inner force pushed Morris to continue. The only problem was that without Butler, they couldn't do anything. In fact, it was Butler that knew how to navigate there. It was Butler that knew how to go through the ice wall. At this point, it almost seemed like they had to give up on this voyage, and they made the decision to postpone this trip until someone could find Butler. So November 14th arrived, and at this point, the trip is canceled. But there is a knock at Morris's door. Guess who it was? It was Captain Butler. He had maps, he had provisions, and he was ready to go. Morris now catches him up on the two strangers that visited. He wanted to know where Butler was and why no one could find him. Butler tells him that he had to hide for security and to protect the maps. At the same time, he was unfolding this map on Morris's table. Morris was so surprised there were lands on this map that he'd never seen before. Butler ordered him to assemble the team. They had to leave that same day. Morris asked Butler, "Do you know who these custodians are?" And this is when Morris said, "Look, there is a lot more I have to tell you. Our history is not the one we were told. These people are the beings that created the pyramids, and they are another race. They're called the custodians." They hurried and gathered the team, and they set off for the south. They set off from Charleston Harbor, and in 150 days, they were going to be at the alleged ice wall. It was a mixture of excitement and panic between the men. What had they gotten themselves into? Sun gods? Another race? What? The voyage was going well. They stopped at the equator for supplies, and they went off for their destination. This was the first chapter of The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls, and we're going to go through the entire book and the entire story. Do you believe that we live on a flat Earth and that we are surrounded by ice walls, and beyond these ice walls, there are lands that we never knew about? Give a like and subscribe. You don't want to miss the upcoming episodes.